And for some way off in India, if you're joining us, it's almost good night or good morning, depending on when you actually end or start your day. But want to thank you for taking out some of your time to join us today. To all of you that are on the phone that are customers, I always like to say we appreciate your support in business, and hopefully we will continue to provide the support that you expect from us. Certainly, I always ask people, we're here, and if you need something, don't hesitate to call us or contact us. So let's start. I'd like to start with kind of a general quick discussion around, life cycle challenges. And I think that what most people are experiencing is a situation where everybody wants stuff faster with better quality, and they want the costs to be decreased and the risk to be decreased. The fact is that those are the sort of major things that everybody's driving towards. And hang on one second, folks. Everyone always talks about these as the life cycle challenges of SAP. I look at it more from the standpoint that these aren't just life cycle challenges. What these are your challenges. And a lot of people may laugh about this, but they certainly are your challenges. And the more I work in this particular technology field, the more I understand that it all sort of flows downhill. And one thing that I've come to understand even more, why are we hearing? That you folks are really the expert practitioners. You're the ones that really understand what's going on in this complex environment that you work in, and you understand what works and what doesn't work. And I want to start with that premise, because when we talk about this migration towards Agile DevOps as it applies to, let's say, an SAP ecosystem, I think that sometimes it gets mischaracterized. And with that, what I mean is that some folks say, oh, this is something that is easy to do. You just, come up with a methodology and move forward. To me, the way I see it, it's not that. What it is, it's a movement, and the movement takes place through technology. I think that what we've seen is a situation where we have a number of challenges, and we also have folks that are kind of dealing with it in phases. And I like to show this chart with these four different examples of companies that really are, in fact, living the reality. They're in some phase of using some aspect of Agile DevOps, some particular change in their method, or in adopting some particular type of automation technology to drive them. If you look, and I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but every one of these companies had a particular objective in mind, and that meant changing the way they did business, the way they approached it, adopting some form of automation to accomplish or deal with some of those challenges. Some were looking at less risk, some were trying to improve quality, some were trying to move faster, some want to do more releases more often. They had to find a different way of doing it. When we go down and we look at hang on, we're just trying to get the slides to move forward here. DevOps, and people ask, what is DevOps? What really does it come down to? And, I could sit on the phone for hours and hours and show many, many charts about methodologies and approaches. And it isn't about that. What it's really about is changing, and not changing all at once, but adopting a different approach, looking at automated tools to support that. But really what you're trying to do is to drive better quality outcomes and do it faster. And I think that's the reality of what we're facing today. You know, we always have to show the stats, right? Are people doing it? I'm going to tell you, when I look at stats, most of the time it's typically driven by people that do want you to move to something. And what's the motivation behind moving? The motivation sometimes is you know, which analyst gets paid the most to talk about a particular piece of technology or a particular methodology. The reality, though, is that what you are seeing is sort of this phase shift as we move from the day of trying to do things manually, where we had more time and we had more people, to an era where change is being implemented fast and efficiently, and hopefully with less risk. And in this complex environment, again, of SAP, and again, working with folks like you, you know, every day we come to find out what you're seeking is those capabilities to automate some of that manual analysis, give you better insight, better discovery. What we're going to do today, and again, I tend to talk less about what you have to do, but show you what you can do with modern technology. That's really what you're after, is what's out there that's going to give me the capability to support these new challenges. Go faster, with less risk, with better outcomes. That's what you need to be able to see. Are these methodologies, are these practices that are supported by new automation capability going to allow you to do that? And is it going to work for you? Again, you're the expert practitioners, and I'll leave you with one thought. When we go out and talk to our existing customers, and we have a few on the line today, most of the enhancements that go into our products come from our customers, because they're living it every day, just like all of you folks are. And that's really what our pledge is to you, is to continue to look at what is it you need and what works to give you that automation capability to be able to move towards what is an agile DevOps approach to your SAP environment. We can talk all day about methodologies, but at the heart of this, where are the tools, where is the technology? I'm a former CFO. I could never imagine the days of old where people sat in rooms full of ledger paper doing accounting. You know, what do we have today? We have modern, sophisticated, you know, very, very automated accounting systems. That evolution of technology is now reaching into the stuff that we do and what you do as expert practitioners in the SAP ecosystems. So with that, we're going to talk about Live Compare. It's our tool. Obviously, we're really excited about what we do to support our customers and help them achieve faster, you know, less risky approaches to how they're implementing change in their SAP ecosystem. And we're going to focus on three areas: development, test, and operations. Just show you, give you a taste of what's available out there to help automate some of that manual analysis. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tim.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. Live Compare has a number of apps that enable development, testing, and operations to function more efficiently while increasing release velocity and maximizing quality. In this session, I'll show you how Live Compare supports DevOps in these critical phases. First, we'll run the apps that help us shift key development efforts left. Then we'll run Impact, a powerful change impact analysis app that cuts testing by 85%. And finally, our operation apps that help us strive towards zero defects in production. The National Institute of Standards and Technology discovered that catching defects as early as possible in the development cycle can significantly reduce your development costs. In fact, as this graphic illustrates, it's 30 times cheaper to fix issues in development than production. And Live Compare has the apps that identify these key issues. At the core of our development apps, you'll find three key features: analyze ABAP quality and complexity, LiveCompare's CodeWatch app reports on rule violations and assesses the overall code quality of your changing objects. Dependency. Wouldn't it be nice to have awareness of all of the dependent objects that your new or modified code interact with, and which ones are out of sync or missing in production? I'll demo LiveCompare Strider to show you how this is done. Impact simulation. LiveCompare's Impact for Custom Release app identifies all impacted transactions, programs, and web applications before you release the transport or even change the code. Now, this effort can surface really good unit tests and allow for cheaper follow-up corrections to be made in development prior to testing. So welcome to LiveCompare. LiveCompare installs in less than a day. It requires no services or consulting fees. It installs on a web server and makes real-time calls to your SAP systems. On the left-hand side in the vertical menu is where you can filter apps by development, testing, and operations. So let's begin with development and launch our first app, CodeWatch. Setting up CodeWatch is easy. I choose which rules I want to include in my review, which SAP systems to analyze, and then a specification of the objects to review. And there are several ways that I can do this. I can identify objects by transports. I can integrate with change and release management tools such as SAP Solution Manager Charm. I can select individual objects or match objects by development class or developer. LiveCompare has many rule checks too. So these are the rule or code checks, and they're organized by the most common lifecycle activities, such as run and maintain for your custom releases, technical upgrades for support and enhancement packs, and also upgrade here, which includes a lot of these HANA checks. So if you're upgrading to the latest HANA release, you can check your custom code for significant HANA concerns. You can add your own custom rules too. So if you have critical elements that you expect your developers to satisfy, include them in LiveCompare and ensure that no bad code escapes to testing. And since I'm running this analysis on my business as usual transports, I'll just leave this run and optimize selection here and click run. When it completes, you'll see this dashboard. Okay. The results start with a high-level dashboard featuring a quality summary chart, grouping code into good, bad, and ugly. Later on in the demo, I'll drill down into some of these performance concerns. Not all rule violations are errors in code. Some are just warnings that can be taken as suggestions or for improvement. And on the right-hand side here, we see our top 10 rules in the error class. From the dashboard, I can open a detailed report in Excel. Okay, so now I have the same experience, the same dashboard in Excel. Let's jump right into the rule break details. Let's have a look at this class, specifically this method within the class. There's a performance issue. It's an error. It's an inefficient insert into loop found on line 84. So we start off with a dashboard grouping all of your custom code and giving it a scorecard. And then when there are issues, you can get right into the details. So both a high-level view and a very detailed view of your analysis. Advanced CodeWatch features include adding objects, rules, or even individual lines of code to an exception list. This will prevent code that you've decided that you won't change from ever showing up in future reports. So why is CodeWatch important? Simply put, CodeWatch helps developers find and fix issues in development where it's 30 times cheaper. Sometimes your change event is larger than a set of business as usual transports. Perhaps you're applying support or enhancement packs or upgrading. LiveCompare has you covered there as well. You can run CodeWatch using one of the upgrade rule sets, or if you like additional custom code insights, run the Strider app. Strider app is super easy to run. You select your current system, your target system, and you click run. And then you get the dashboard. Strider has three core competencies: impact, quality, and usage. Now, starting from the bottom, in these last two rows of information, these can be used to help us pay down our technical debt. Okay, you can retire some of this unused custom code and return some of this used custom code back to standard, where there are similarities in the latest release in the standard code. For the custom code that you do want to keep, you want to address all of these code quality issues. But a lot of the value of Strider is all about this top tier here about impact. Now, SAP has a great tool that surfaces your modified standard objects. So we surface that here in SPDD and SPAU. It makes a great addition to this overall code analysis. But a key thing what Strider does is it looks at all of those dependent objects, all those standard SAP objects that are changed that your custom code depend upon, from function modules, tables, structures, includes, classes, methods, and programs. Okay, so we have 13, this is a very small example, but we have 13 custom programs that depend upon these changing objects. In other words, they directly invoke these standard objects, and SAP has changed them during the upgrade. Let's have a look at some of the details of those 13 programs. Again, you can see the details in Excel, starting with the dashboard. You can drill down into all of the different sheets here. So the usage and quality sheets help us pay down our technical debt of our custom code. We have our modified standard objects. But let's focus on this impacted bottom-up view of the analysis, specifically this class. It's a standard SAP class called front-end services. It's changed in this upgrade. The issue is we have 4 programs, custom programs that we use in production that directly call this class. So it's important to see, well, how has this class changed? And to do that, you simply click right within the Excel report on the change in class. And Live Compare gives you a nice side-by-side comparison of the code. So I see there's a number of changes here on the side that I can click through. Quite a bit of changes. So it's critical to know, how are these 4 custom programs going to interact with that highly changed class? So it's good to test, and it's all about shifting these efforts left. The efforts of testing the custom code that invokes standard SAP objects that change. So isn't it nice to have all this custom code insight within one Excel file and have this report the same day you install Live Compare? There are no special prerequisites needed in SAP, no additional configuration and solution manager needed. Live Compare is installed and run and done within one day. Now, before we move on to testing, I really have to show you Live Compare's Quick Compare Wizard. It's a really neat utility, often used by developers and very commonly used during the early phases of the DevOps lifecycle. So the Quick Compare Wizard allows you to select any 2 systems and any object, including smart forms. Have you ever tried to compare smart forms in SAP or web applications? All of this good stuff here. So now there's way too many scenarios for this particular app to use for today's demo. There's hundreds. I'm just going to show you one. It's a exploring and comparing the versions of a class. So classes can be pretty tricky. Live Compare not only supports the class, but also all of the related methods. So here are all the versions of this particular class. I'm going to compare the active one to the way this class looked back in August 30th. Click Compare. So now we see all of the methods related to the class, and we can see 2 are out of sync. We also see some protected components that are out of sync as well. I can click on it and get right into the code to see how these change. So you can imagine how this can be useful very early when developing or changing code. Okay, on to testing. Complete test coverage, 85% faster. Okay, we've selected a sample of 15 Live Compare customers who ran impact against their support pack upgrades. We found that on average, we reduced the testing scope of their projects by 85%. These were customers who were going to take the let's test everything approach. Instead of testing everything or missing impacted executables that are not on your test radar, LiveCompare identifies the best transaction set that covers all of the changing objects. So on average, customers use about 3,000 transactions programs in web applications, of which about 1/3 are custom. SAP support stacks often contain hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of changing objects, and these can impact the majority of what you use. And sometimes SAP changes very common objects like table T001, for example. That's your company code table. You could have hundreds of used executables interact with that table, but why test that single table 100 different times? LiveCompare identifies the most used business-critical T-code that most directly calls into that changing object and assigns that one the most at-risk status. That's how we're enabling our customers to reduce the testing scope to 85%. It's by focusing on these most at-risk objects to test. You're invoking or testing the exact same changing objects, but it's with the best, most optimal transaction set possible. And it's covering all the changing objects that you really should care about. LiveCompare Impact apps identify what's changed. What are the changing objects in your support packs or transports or charm IDs? And from our reports, you can drill down into the changing objects to see how they've changed. And most importantly, we link the changing objects to the best set of executables to test them. And when available, we bring in their related test assets. So let's go back into LiveCompare. And let's filter by testing. Select impact for custom release. Simple workflow app to use. Click on the app. In here, I'm going to analyze transports. So you can just copy and paste these here. And of course, you can also integrate it with any of your change management systems. Or if you want to do a what-if analysis or a simulated scenario, you can add, say, an enhancement object, type in the enhancement object name, and then do a what-if scenario. What if we change this particular object? What do we need to test in production? The last thing I'm going to select here is a quality center project to integrate with, and then click Run. And then we have the dashboard with our used objects, impacted and most at risk, and the details that go right into Excel here. So let me open up the details. Okay, so we see that we're changing about 133 objects. Now, most of them are ABAP related. There's 13 config, 39 data tables, and 7 objects related to security. So the objects that we're changing range from domains to tables here. Now, the value of this report is all in this list here. So here's the transports I analyzed in the change ID. These are the objects contained within those transports, the type of change it is, and what we need to test. So if I filter first on, say, ABAP, I can see we're changing all of these ABAP code here, and I can click on any of these to see the side-by-side difference of that function module. So here's how we're changing the code. So it's a complete rewrite of that function module. I go back into the report. What I really want to know, what are the impacted executables that invoke that function? So just double click here. I can see I have 4 transactions that call this changing function module. Okay. Another example of this is most commonly changes our configuration. So here we're changing the TVAC table, and we have 4 transactions to test. So 2 programs that directly call the changing table at a depth of 1, and 2 T-codes that call the table at a depth of 2, meaning the T-code calls a program that calls the table. So it's a pretty close change. But what's interesting about this is it's a transaction, ME20, for stock monitoring. Now there's a lot of screens to that transaction. This one tells me which one to focus on. Here's the changing screen, 305, display stock. Also, this transaction is used almost 4,000 times. by 4 different users. And the top user is T. Brady. So if I did not know how to test this particular transaction, I can ask T. Brady, and maybe he can provide some insight. And we also bring in any related ALM test assets with their test plan IDs. It's a manual test located in this path. So when you're done with your testing, you can go back into Live Compare and run a follow-up app called Test Audit. Now you take all those transactions that you should test, you put them into Test Audit, you give yourself a start and end date of your test cycle, you connect to your QA environment, you connect to your ALM environment, and you hit run. And what you get is a dashboard that tells you, of those 68 transactions, you've only run 4. So there are 64 transactions that are critical because they're impacted and you haven't run them yet in QA. So there's no way you should really release this change into production yet. And most of your related ALM test plans haven't been run either. So that was an example of using Impact to find impacted T codes, programs, and web applications. Live Compare also supports security, identifying impacted authorizations and roles, BW, identifying impacted queries, cubes, and info areas, EWM, identifying impacted individual RFUI steps, and RFC and IDOCs. Okay, lastly, operations. DevOps. It's all about creating an integrated team whose sole purpose is to turn ideas into working software. Live Compare has multiple apps that help ensure zero production defects, keeping operations in good health. The release assurance, system synchronization, and monitor and audit apps support a dynamic range of operational needs. We don't have enough time to cover all of these here, but let's have a very quick look at the release assurance app. Now I'm going to filter by operations and select release assurance. So I'm just going to go right into the results. So what I did to run the app is I selected one transport, and I said I'm going to move it to my QA environment to my production environment. So that one transport contained 428 source objects. Now what release assurance does is it first identifies all of the dependent objects, and it compares them between QA and production, and it found 30 that are different or missing. That means I forgot to include a transport into my source bundle. Instead of moving one, maybe I should be moving 1 or 2, because it's dependent upon 30 objects that are out of sync. So no matter how I'm testing this in QA, it's not going to behave the same way in production due to the 30 objects that are out of sync. So we can see by the pie chart, most of the dependent objects are in sync, but there are 15 that are different and 15 that are completely missing in production. So when I move these source objects into production, it's going to call upon 15 objects that are missing. These are functions, programs, includes, function groups, and structures. And here are the dependency transport owners. So in the business side, I can now reach out to the development side and say, maybe these developers here, and start talking about their transport and including them in the bundle. We have some information here about their transports. So let's drill down to the results to make it a little bit more clear. So again, we have that one transport. Here are all the source objects. So we have the transport, the source objects. A lot of them are clean, meaning they don't have any dependency alerts. But let's filter out the zeros. Okay, so now we have some of these. Let's take a look at this include. So we're going to move this include into production, but it has 3 alerts. Let's double click on the 3. So if I move this transport, which contains this include into production, there's going to be an issue because it calls a sub-include, like this guy here. So I can just click here, and I can see between QA and prod, there are a lot of differences here. So this whole insert is missing in production. Well, what if my parent include that calls this one, it directly depends upon this? So it's not going to behave the same way in production. Therefore, I should find the related transport and move it with it. So to find the related transport, you just click here. So there are 6 related transports to this dependency include, and the latest one is listed right here. So in summary, Live Compare is all about smart DevOps. Increase release velocity, and maximize code quality. Thank you for this, for joining me on this demo, and now back to Jerry.
Hello, folks. Again, Tim, thank you very much. I think Tim's challenge whenever we do these webinars is trying to cover, a few of the particular apps that are within, our product Live Compare in a very short period of time. There's just a ton of different capabilities, all set up in a similar way to make it easy for you guys to be able to use it and deploy it, and more importantly, to disseminate the information. I kind of look at what we do as providing, an easy way to implement a automated product, deliver actionable information to a broad range of practitioners, within your companies that are responsible for moving change through those SAP systems. I wanted to come back to this one slide really quick, and if people have asked me, are any of these companies 100% Agile DevOps? And the answer is no. The answer, though, is that they're in very, very different phases of how they're changing the underlying approach and methods that they use to support their business needs, from the standpoint of how do we react to the business and the changes they want to make. And, if I looked at them, the one in the lower right corner, which is a consumer products company, they are probably closest to what would be considered Agile DevOps, kind of more on a pure methodology standpoint. And I will tell you, the reason they got there was because they were practicing Agile DevOps for the software that resides within their products.
Hey,
and
Jerry?
Yep.
Oh, can you share your screen?
Oh, sorry. I'm not sure what you were seeing there. Bailey's going to bring it up.
Okay, we got it now. Thanks.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. What I wanted to say, you heard the dialogue, but the one company that what I wanted to point out is the consumer products. What they were challenged with was they were practicing DevOps for the software that was used in their products. And the business said, why is it that we can move change so quickly through this sophisticated code that we have embedded in our products, but we can't do it on the SAP side? And one of the individuals there, he said, well, let me see what I can do. And he went on a long process of evaluating different pieces of automation technology, ours and others, to find ways for him to be able to achieve a more rapid deployment model. And what he was trying to do was create more of an agile environment within his SAP, ecosystem, and he did it. And I think what you see there is what they were very focused on was how can they increase the number of releases, and fundamentally to his approach was reducing the amount of testing, especially around their custom code. Are they truly Agile DevOps? They're the closest that we've seen that has tried to mirror what they did on their, software that they use for their products into the SAP system, and they've made incredible strides. Are they done yet? No. They continue to refine it and find more automation, more techniques, and we spend a lot of time with customers like them, asking what else can we do to allow you to automate some of the manual analysis you do. And that's the commitment we make to our customers and to you guys as expert practitioners, is to continue to look for ways to enhance that experience, give you that automation technology so that you guys can really do what you need to do, because as I said earlier, you know what works and you know what doesn't work. And one thing, again, I've learned kind of over the years of working in technology is that the expert practitioners, the folks on the ground like you, that are really doing the work, the ones that really have to face up to the challenges we talked about earlier, they're the ones that know what they need. They also are the ones that know what works and what doesn't work. So with that, I'd like to just open it up for questions. and Tim and I will kind of respond, based on what the question is, okay? But again, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you taking out some of your valuable time to spend with us. Appreciate it. All right, Bailey, any questions?
All right, yeah, we had a couple come through. So the first one is, does Live Compare work with custom code?
All right, Tim, why don't you take that one?
Sure. Yes, Live Compare supports all of your custom code, custom MobOp, web applications. Where it shines the brightest is find the custom code that you use the most in production that is either out of sync itself or invokes standard dependencies that are out of sync during any kind of change event, and then relating that custom code back to the best possible test assets.
Okay.
All right. And how much effort is required to get Live Compare up and running?
Well, let me take that one, Bailey. I think that Tim talked briefly about that during his demo. Really, we like to use the motto "run and done in a day." Certainly, to configure and set up Live Compare is fairly, it's a very straightforward implementation. I think that when you look at it, you have to have a Windows server, and you've got to have the transport that you apply to the target system you want to analyze, and the basic software supports the rest of it. I think that part of what we really work towards is to help folks understand through our training, both online and automated training, how to surface that information, and then who is really going to use that information for what purposes. But the overall implementation is really very straightforward.
All right, and one last one for today. Can you run tests from Live Compare?
Yeah, so Live Compare identifies tests that you should run, but it doesn't execute any kind of automated tests for you.
Okay, great. And just to wrap it up, here's a couple of resources for you guys. We do have a blog, as well as LinkedIn, Twitter, as well as the iShare community for you guys to get more information. If you had questions, we will get back to you over email. Also, thank you for dealing with the technical difficulties that we had today. Thank you for joining this live webinar, and we hope to chat with you all soon.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Have a good rest of the week and the weekend. Thanks, Tim. Bailey.
Thank you. Take care.